I particularly remember a doctor named Shaitan Singh in Bikaner. He called me up and said that my father was a friend of Major Shaitan Singh, and that's why I was named Shaitan Singh. When I checked that this family had no connection with Major Shaitan Singh, and those people who were in the battle, they'll say a complete different account.
Our Indian media loves talking about Pakistan, but they rarely talk about China. The main threat to India is China, not Pakistan. In 2014, China became the only nation to state that they are ready to fight wars with any country in the world, in any part of the world, in all 6 domains: land, sea, air, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and space. Till date, even America has not admitted they can fight in all 6 domains.
One of the major soft point of Russia has always been lack of access to warm water port. This is one point which nobody talks about. Osama bin Laden, who was half Yemeni, half Saudi, half Syrian, whatever, bombed their 2 towers. They went and straight attacked Afghanistan. कायदे से तो फिर सऊदी अरब को अटैक करना चाहिए था.
So China is only buying time. It is buying time till 2030.
A biography cannot be black and white. It is always grey. You have to actually go through the facts.
So that's the reason these books are being written. The gap in our history, which has gone missing, and with passing time, these will possibly be out of memory. So that's why these authors are here. And of course, all 3 of them written on different books. So I start with the one who's speaking left, my left. Hi, Samota. So tell me, Ajay, this battle happened in 1962. It's been years, decades. What made you write this book in 2002?
So basically, what had happened was I was in college in 2019, and I kind of presented a story in a storytelling competition, and I lost that competition. I actually went with the story of the Battle of Rezang. So I lost that competition, and one of my professors told me that your story is incomplete. It lacks the background of the hero, because whatever I could find on the internet, I wrote it and I went with the story. And that particular statement from my professor triggered me or made me curious that, okay, let me find out more about this man. So I started digging out more on internet and I could not find anything. And then I decided, okay, I'll try to find his family. And it took me almost 4 months to find his son's contact and another 4 months to visit him. And when I visited him, I asked him if there is any reference book because I just want to complete my story. So he says nobody has ever written any biography on my father. He himself actually had commissioned a couple of authors, but nobody could complete anything. So at the age of 19, I just promised him, okay, I'll write a book on your father. And I had no idea how to write a biography. I, I wrote 3 chapters in January 2020 and I deleted all those 3 chapters because I also felt that, okay, this is nothing. Then I started, contacting his colleagues, his seniors, his school friends, his college friends, unit seniors, everybody. And fortunately, I could find a lot of people related to him, directly related to him. I interviewed his brother, his school seniors, his schoolmates, everybody I interviewed. And it took me 4 years to complete this book. And this is the first and only biography written on Major Shaitan Singh. So I find myself, privileged that I am the author of the only biography, and it was probably my destiny that I could write this one. So yeah.
Yeah, that's me, of course. This is introductory round. Okay. The second book is Contours of the Greater Game. So we all had a great game going till roughly about 1905, and now somebody is referred to it as Greater Game. So here we have Arindam next to my right. One thing I think, I was very happy reading the synopsis of the book. I also belong to a category of writers who believe and who propagate the fact that 1947 and story beyond around that, the separation of Pakistan was a British ploy. It was a Western ploy, and Pakistani, that whatever story thing happened, it was just a way of doing it. So this Eurocentric approach to creation of Pakistan, which you refer to in the book, if you just try to make our audience aware, because this is generally not known.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, there are two aspects of the creation of Pakistan. One is the one that has been widely, propagandized, and the Hindu and the Muslim divide, and thus, different nation was sort of revered, which is what we know, which is what we told, which is what has been going on in East Coast for a very long time.
Thank you. Thank you for the attention to the matter.
Technically speaking, if you think about it, a Delhi to Dhaka stretch housed the maximum number of Indian Muslims. So, a Delhi to Dhaka stretch would probably be a more suitable place for a Pakistan if a new nation were to come in. Why did it happen to be there at that particular junction? That is where the geopolitical angle comes in behind the creation of Pakistan. Now, I don't know if you can recall the map of that Haitian map, if it is there at the top of your mind. Like what we do as geopolitical enthusiasts and as analysts is we study maps, we remember maps, we memorize maps. So if you think about the map when the southernmost expansion point of Russia was drawn in 1897, it was a place in Turkmenistan, and thus Afghanistan was created. Afghanistan was there as a buffer state. And Pakistan and India were very much a part of the Indian subcontinent. It was the British Indian subcontinent, right? Now, 1930s was the time when the 20s and 30s were the time when the British people started realizing that we might have to move out. On the other hand, 1920s and 30s and 40s were a time when you had a Soviet Union which was out on a rampage. They wanted to set the East ablaze with their ideas of communism and all. So you had one power which was shrinking and which was probably going to hand over their mantle to the United States, and you had another power which was on an expansion mode. One of the major drawbacks of Soviet Union, Imperial Russia, before that Tsarist Russia, and even today Russia, one of the major soft point of Russia has always been lack of access to warm water port. This is one point which nobody talks about. Russian north is frozen half the year. Your resources, your business is as good as your access to open market. Russian access to bomb water port is only Black Sea, which is the reason why they're so friendly with Turkey, despite Turkey doing whatever they're doing. Right? With Russia coming frightfully close to the Indian subcontinent, all Russia needed to do was just draw a line between Afghanistan, between that Wakhan corridor. They didn't even have to take over Afghanistan. Afghanistan के कोई contract कर लो, वो portion ले लो, they would have straight access to Indian subcontinent, thus Arabian Sea, thus warm water port. So Pakistan there was left as a British legacy, which was put in as a wedge that was supposed to stop Russia's access to warm water port. The advantage that played in the favor of the Brits was their popularity was already very high because 1920s, 1970, 20, First World War got over, Ottoman Empire crushed. They helped create the creation of so many Arab nations. So they knew that our popularity, they were very good friends with Iran. They knew that our popularity with the Muslim world is going to only soar if we create Pakistan there, and Pakistan serving as our garrison state, as our military outpost, because we already have our guns in Torkham and guns in Attock, and we have the. Okay, now there is another interesting point about Gilgit-Baltistan, which I can cover if time permits, but we can come back to that. So I hope you get that idea that it was less about, nation Hindu-Muslim divide and things like that from the British perspective. Of course, it was there. It was fundamental to us probably. But for them, it was like कुछ भी हो जाए, वहाँ पे एक wedge डालना है so that we can stop Soviet Union advance into in their quest for warm water port. Hence, Pakistan got created there. Over to you, sir.
Thanks for saying that, because people generally even still believe that two nation theory, like I said, there were fault lines within our own society and country, and people exploited it. The third
They had decided many things that year. We have fought wars with China. I have no comment saying China is an enemy nation because many of the Indian Army soldiers, civilians have died because of China. But we have to learn something from China, and that is they plan decades in advance. They have planning decades in advance, and they have one very important factor which is missing in most nations today, that is accountability and responsibility. And that has taken China where it is today. In 1950, when it was just a year of China finishing the civil war, the communists taking over the power in China, 3 years since independence of India and the creation of Pakistan. In the year 1950, amongst the three nations, that is Pakistan, India, and China, Pakistan was the richest, with a per capita GDP of 83.3 US dollars. India was at number 2 with 82.2 American dollars per capita GDP. And China was the poorest among the three with just 53 American dollars as the per capita GDP. So see where China was in 1950 and where China is today. Amongst the many things that China planned after the civil war ended was that within 100 years, of 1949, that is by year 2049, they have to achieve certain military aims. And that time, the most important, and still today, the first important military aim is Taiwan. Like every Pakistani is obsessed with Jammu and Kashmir, every Chinese is obsessed with Taiwan. And then they started the planning. But China planned their way in a very methodical manner. They first focused on education. They realized education will get them to places which no other factor can. And in my book, sir, I have explained all these factors in detail. Just 2 minutes on your specific question of how I wrote this book. Well, after I entered the Indian media on 9 December 2021, I started appearing on various news channels and speaking on various topics. And by the virtue of me being in the media and having to appear on TV shows at a very short notice, I had to keep on reading a lot. And the more I read about China, the more I was intrigued that this is one threat which is facing not only India, but the whole world. And we in India rarely talk about China. Our Indian media loves talking about Pakistan, but they rarely talk about China. The main threat to India is China, not Pakistan. In 1998, our then Defense Minister, Mr. George Fernandez, said that India's number one enemy is China. There was so much of political pressure on him that he had to withdraw his statement 5 years later in 2003. If we look back in hindsight, Mr. George Fernandez was absolutely correct. On 12th April this year, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War of America, earlier the Secretary of Defense, who's equivalent to our Defense Minister, said that in 20 minutes, the Chinese hypersonic missiles can destroy all 11 aircraft carriers of the US Navy. And also, the same day, he said, in all the internal military war games of the US military, the Americans always lose to the Chinese. If the Defense Minister of America is giving this statement in public domain, it has too much weight. On 17 March this year, General Upendra Dwivedi, the Chief of Army Staff of the Indian Navy, said that a two-front war on India is no longer a possibility, it's a reality. In the book, I have written that China and Pakistan will wage a two-front war on India in 2035. But this book was released last year and much has happened after that. Two important things I would like to highlight. One is the change of regime of Bangladesh, and the other is the construction of the Medoc Dam, which is just 30 kilometers from the Arunachal border. So in my fresh assessment, moment this Medoc Dam is completed in 2030, after 2030, anytime China and Pakistan will wage a two-front war on India. Thank you.
That's good. It's very difficult to predict anything in today's environment. And like you said, a lot has happened. I'll ask you this again. Last 1 year, since you wrote your book, a lot of things have changed. Okay, going back to Jay, I also written a couple of books. So I understand when you write a biography, you have something based on evidence in front of you. Then you have something we may refer to as folklore. Then you have something called hearsay. So when you sit down to write, generally what happens is the evidence thing actually it's very boring. Folklore is all right. Hearsay is sensational. So as an author, you really have to really be very honest, be very tough as your book. You write the real story the way you write. So how did you overcome this? Yarima?
So actually, this thing happened with me. When people got to know that okay, I'm writing this book, so they connected me with a lot of different people. So I particularly remember a doctor named Shaitan Singh in Bikaner. He called me up and said that my father was a friend of Major Shaitan Singh, and that's why I was named Shaitan Singh. So when I checked back, this family had no connection with Major Shaitan Singh. So that kind of stuff happened a lot, and the questions are asked that how do you overcome this? So you have to be very rational. Obviously, on the person who you are writing is a hero for you as well. There is one particular advice which was given to me by a history professor in my college, that was a biography cannot be black and white. It is always gray. So you have to decide all by yourself that what is true and what cannot be true. You have to, because Battle of Rezang is a legend. It is a legend in the Indian Army, and there are hundreds of things which are hearsay that this man killed 20 people or 30 people. But you have to, first read how it happened, why it happened, and what was the backdrop of it. And after that, I have spent time with army a lot of times, and the veterans of that period. So I used to ask them that, did you have the weapons to kill that much of people? And they refused that we could not do it. So there were claims, we killed 1,300 people, which was not true. Even the government never accepted it. So for those kind of irrational or hearsay things, you have to be very rational and you have to be very careful while writing it, because once you write it, people are going to read it and then they are going to believe it. Okay, this happened in the battle or this happened in the life of the person. So when I used to go to Jodhpur for research, on Major Shaitan Singh's earlier days, so everybody, used to come and say my father or my grandfather used to play with Major Shaitan Singh because he was a great footballer. And even in the school, there are so many stories that he could kick, for 50 meters or this and that, which is not practically possible. So you have to be very careful about those things, and you have to actually go through the facts. And when there are certain things which are folklores or which are in the interviews you are conducting with the people, so you have to go and cross check that. Right now, I'm working on 1962 Ladakh. So again, I'm covering the Battle of Rezang. So this time, I interviewed the people who were in that sector. So when you speak with those people who were not in the battle, they say a lot of different things about the battle. And those people who were in the battle, they'll say a complete different account. So you also get confused, and then you have to take out an abstract from that, what you can write, and what is your point of view of, or what is your perspective of that battle. So this is how you do it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, the people who fight on ground, their vision is also restricted. They're seeing at a small patch of land in front, they're kind of anticipating or kind of perceiving it differently. The person who's sitting is not on ground, he has a different perception. The guy sitting in a city somewhere, he has a perception. So all of us.
Yes.
So in your way of defining geopolitics, you use two terms, access and control. And then you tell us in your book that how US has been trying to play around these tools, I call them. So just to share with the audience, what do you mean by when you say access and control in geopolitics?
Okay. Geopolitics, as I understand, is about access and control. And trust me, if you want to make sense of whatever's happening in this world, and you go back by 200-300 years, at least, maybe more, maybe 500 years, and try to understand what's been happening, it'll come down to these two basic things: access and control. Now, if I were to talk about access in isolation, and if I were to make sense about what is happening, why is United West, led by United States, behaving in a particular way, it basically flows down from three people, three thinkers and three political scientists, you would call them, politicians, geographers, different identities they had. Most of us have not heard about them. Number one is a gentleman by the name of Alfred Mahan. He is the one that first sort of analyzed the theory of maritime dominance, which is like whoever rules the waves rules the world. So that was Mahan's dictum, and he's the one that sort of understood what made Spain and what at one point in time and what made England the colonial powers that they were. They're capable to rule over the seas, the biggest bullies on the seas. And his prediction was United States is going to become one. All you got to do is maintain your control. Today, United States is not, if you look at it, it's not a military power as much as there is a naval power. And United States has very smartly managed to keep it under the radars. Today, if United States moved a platoon, it'll be front page news. Today, if United States moves a fleet, that news won't even make to the 5th page. They rule the seas. They are biggest bullies. They have a control or they have a direct interest in all the choke points all around the world, which Alfred Mahan identified. That's one part of the story of Axis. The second part of the story of Axis, which I have covered in this book, comes from one gentleman by the name of Hartford Mackinda. He's the gentleman that coined this term that, whoever rules the heartland rules the world island. Whoever rules the world island rules the world. So by heartland, he means the heart of Asia, which is like a rough sketch. If you start drawing a line from Afghanistan and way down to Soviet East, and then you cross that Arctic line and come over to the Scandinavian countries and then trace that line back into Afghanistan, that huge area, several million square kilometers, that was heartland, according to Alfred Mackinda. Now, there are political reasons why he wrote. If you find this interesting, you would find the book very interesting. He had his motivations. That was the time of industrial era. There were no specific differentiation between a land expansionist power and a sea expansionist power, and he was pushing his country, which was Great Britain, to push into Central Asia and all. Forget that. But the thing is that even later on, if you notice Henry Kissinger, if you notice Brzezinski, their core focus has been on that Halford Mackinder base heartland. United States has been trying to get into Central Asia, I don't know since how many years now. A major part of Cold War was fought for that. Once Soviet Union crumbled, at Pakistan. They went at the hit Afghanistan. The dhanda was to take the Taliban regime out because they had called these Talibans back in 2001 or somewhere. It's there in the book, and they had asked for that transit permission, a pipeline from Turkmenistan through Afghanistan into Pakistan. Porting out in the Arabian Sea. Taliban went there. They said, thank you very much. Khana ke liye, pilane ke liye. They came back and they demanded a hefty transit fee. That was when they lost their coup. So, the thing is that they created this, tried to create this color revolution in Kazakhstan. So, they're now trying to look for a base in Bagra. So, while following Alfred Mahan's dictum, they have been highly successful in the sea. Following Halford Mackinder's dictum, their records have been patchy. And the third person that I've used is a gentleman called Nicholas Pikeman, who's the godfather of containment. Well, Halford Mackinder created Heartland. Nicholas Pikeman said, okay, Heartland ke bahar wala jo hissa hai, the area that connects Heartland to the sea is the Rimland. So if you don't have access to Heartland, no worries. Rimland pe kabza karo, you would have it sorted. That sort of explains why Marshall Plan went to Western Europe, because that's a part of the Rimland. Why is the United States so interested in Turkey? Part of the Rimland. Why is the United States so interested in Iran? Part of the Rimland. Why is the United States interested in India? And it goes like that. Philippines, Cambodia, Singapore, South Korea, Japan. So if you want to make sense of all of that, these are the three gentlemen, and I have dealt these three gentlemen in details in that book. That gives you an idea of a lot of the madness that is happening all around us, all around in the world.
So, thank you. Sodhi, you mentioned, and we spoke about it, that lot has happened over the last 1 year. Many optimistic people here feel that now China is going to be a friend. Some less optimistic people feel China is going to be a friend for 2, 3, 4 years. But then, like you said. So, whatever is happening around us, even China and us, what do you think India should be doing? Do we believe Chinese plan that the induction and disengagement has happened and the US has come into Pakistan, so Pakistan is throwing China? Do we go with that narrative, or What do you feel India should be doing?
So China is only buying time. It is buying time till 2030. As far as India is concerned, India should not get swayed away by whatever so-called positive overtures China is trying to show. Because if we see from the Chinese and the Pakistani view, these two nations are very clear what they want. Pakistan wants Jammu and Kashmir, China wants Arunachal Pradesh. For this, I'll take 2 minutes to explain. From the Pakistani point of view, we'll have to go back to 1971 when India defeated Pakistan and split into two nations and Bangladesh emerged. Next month on 24th January 1972, in the city of Multan in Pakistan, there was a conference held called the Multan Conference, which was presided by Pakistani Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. In the Multan Conference, three important decisions were taken for the future of Pakistan. One, they will acquire nuclear weapons. Second, they will support terrorism in India to make India unstable. And third, they will wage a war for Jammu and Kashmir in the coming times. Over a period of time, we have seen everything fructifying. They got nuclear weapons in 98. They started supporting terrorism, firstly in the state of Punjab from 1980 till 1995, and then from the end of 1989 till date in Jammu and Kashmir. But the third plan was not getting any fructification. That was to wage a war for Jammu and Kashmir. Because militarily, Pakistan knew they can never defeat India. But things changed on 14th March 2013, when Xi Jinping became China's president for the first time. And thereafter started the strong bond between China and Pakistan. And now China and Pakistan are working towards the two-front war, which I just enumerated, whose warning has also been given by the Chief Army Staff. And all timelines, like I said earlier, now point to any time after 2030 when the Medoc Dam is constructed. Now, why Medoc Dam is important, we need to understand that. You see, earlier the wars were fought on three domains: land, sea and air, where Army, Navy, Air Force played a major role, as we all are aware. But things changed after the Gulf War of 1991. In the Gulf War of 1991, computers are used for the first time. And every day, 1,000 fighter aircrafts of 42 nations under the US multinational coalition force bombed Iraq, and their flight plans were made using computers for the first time. Like I said, over 1,000 fighter aircraft from 42 countries bombarded Iraq. America or Pentagon then commissioned a study, and in 2001, the Pentagon published a military strategy called Full Spectrum Operations Doctrine. This replaced the air-land battle concept of 1982, in which Army, Navy, Air Force played the major roles for a modern era. Full Spectrum Operations Doctrine said modern wars will be fought in 6 domains: land, sea, air, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and space. In 2014, China became the only nation to state that they are ready to fight wars with any country in the world and in any part of the world in all 6 domains. Till date, even America has not admitted they can fight in all 6 domains. Now comes the importance of water. 6 domains I have talked, and 7th domain of war for China against India will be water. When Medoc Dam, which is being constructed just 30 kilometers from the Arunachal border, is completed in 2030, China will have enormous water storage capacity. And when China decides to wage the two-front war, in which the first attack will come from Pakistan for Jammu and Kashmir, and China will jump in later for Arunachal Pradesh, it will start with China flooding parts of Arunachal Pradesh. Thereafter, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and space warfare will start. And the Army, Navy, Air Force will be used much later. So we have time as a country for 5 years to prepare ourselves. I've written an article which I published a few months back. India needs to have the great Indian Tiger Leap. We have 5 years to prepare ourselves economically, militarily. Our focus should be only economic and military preparedness. If we talk about military preparedness, China is ahead of us. But nothing is impossible. We need to work on it. It is highly possible. We just need to focus on these two aspects for the next 5 years.
Thank you. There's so many questions to be asked, but we are running out of time. Okay, one question we can take for audience.
This is for Surya. I'm told that the Chinese army is untested and not scientific. Does that work? Yes.
So you're absolutely right. The Chinese last fought a conventional war in 1939 with Vietnam, and we know how Vietnam, a small country, defeated China. But that was 1979, and like I just explained earlier, over the years, China has progressed in technology where they use technology first to polarize the nation that they are planning to attack, first Taiwan and then India. After they have polarized using cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, space, and in case of India, water, then they will launch the Army, Navy, Air Force. By the time, these four domains would have taken care of a lot of things. So yes, sir, you are absolutely right. The soldiers are no match for our Indian soldiers, but the modern warfare has changed.
Yeah, we saw in Operation Sindoor. Thanks a ton for such a lively discussion, and I wish we had more time. Thanks a ton. Thank you, everybody.